Let's get immediate reaction to what the opposition leader said there. I'm joined live by the Home Affairs Minister, Clare O'Neil. Minister, the opposition leader says the Prime Minister's dropped the ball. He says that the National Security Committee should have met by now and that the Prime Minister isn't as focused as he should be on this response and the local ramifications in this country from the Hamas atrocities. What do you say to that?
Well, firstly, Kieran, can I just say that we're speaking today about incredibly tragic circumstances. We heard the news overnight that we've established that the first Australian fatality has been found in as a consequence of this violence, and that's a terrible thing for this woman, for her family and for her community. We've got Jewish Australians around our country who are in deep and serious pain. This is a profoundly personal thing that has happened to them, and all triggered by what is an abhorrent, inhuman and completely unacceptable act of terrorism and violence. Violence that will only beget more violence, and I think anyone watching this with any knowledge of the situation knows that this is going to continue for some time, that the ramifications are going to be felt here in Australia, but particularly in the Middle East, probably into the foreseeable future. So I think this is an awful tragedy and something that has very serious implications for Australians. Those implications are wide and varied, and the Australian government has very many lines of effort into making sure that we're protecting Australians who are in Israel, thinking about the community here in Australia, thinking about the security situation here in Australia, managing the returns of people. There are, virtually all parts of government involved in some way in this response, and the effort that's undergoing here is what you would expect of an Australian government. If I can just say quickly, the Leader of the Opposition is out trying to, create conflict. And I just say, is there any issue that faces this country that he doesn't want to turn into a Labor versus Liberal battle? I think our citizens and citizens around the world who are affected by this deserve so much more. And if we can't get on the same page with this one, I do worry about this just intense conflict orientation of Australian politics.
On the specifics, though, of not having had a National Security Committee of Cabinet meeting yet, what do you say to his critique on that? Because you're one of the key security ministers. He referred to the fact that the PM could get advice in the same room as the ADF boss, the head of ASIS, the head of ASIO, talk about important things like the repatriation of citizens. Has the government maintained that focus, even though that committee has not met, as the opposition leader believes it was important too?
Yeah, so Kieran, I don't believe it's appropriate for me to talk about when the National Security Committee of Cabinet meets. So I'm not going to make a comment about the timing of that, other than that I will say that I've been briefed every day by security officials. The Prime Minister's been briefed every day by security officials on the way that the Australian government is responding to this. One of the really urgent priorities of government here is to make sure that we are protecting Australians as best we can who are in Israel. And I would say to Australians watching right now, if you have any relatives in Israel and you want to come home and they would like to return to Australia, make sure they have registered with the embassy in Israel, and the Australian government is working at the moment through the logistics of how to assure the safe return of Australians. With the Leader of the Opposition's continuous attempts to make this into a political issue, I just say I feel really saddened by that. The government is incredibly focused on what is a very important national security situation for our country. If I can just mention one more thing, Kieran, we engaged the National Coordination Mechanism of the Australian Government today to coordinate and integrate the work that is occurring across government, which is quite tremendous, the amount of effort that is being required here, because, as I said, an incident like this requires all of government to work together properly. The National Coordination Mechanism has not been triggered for an event like this before. It was something that we started during COVID. I triggered that response during Optus and during Medibank, excuse me, and the first meeting of that organisation was held this afternoon. It brings together all the parts of government that are responsible here, but also goes down the layers of government, because, of course, state police are integrally important. The social cohesion question is a really important one for me, and that's something that sits across all levels of government.
Indeed, and I do want to drill into that, because it's very interesting at this moment of uncertainty internationally, but here as well. Before we do get into that social cohesion question and how that mechanism that you've triggered will help provide some oversight on that. There's one other thing that Mr Dutton mentioned that I should get your reaction to, and that is about those rallies. He asked the question, are Border Force there? Are they looking at the individuals participating? Are they visa holders, citizens, or should they be deported? Is that something your department is undertaking?
Can I say about the rallies, Kieran, I feel very upset by some of what I've seen in the last 48 hours, and I've been surprised by it, honestly. What we have here is brutal violence against complete innocents, men, women, children, young children who have been harmed physically, who are going to live a life now without their parents. And for what? Innocent people, completely innocent people being killed by terrorists. And here we have people who are marching on the street in some way trying to defend or justify that. And I think it's really important that at a time like this we stand together as one country and accept that this is not about religion and it's not about politics. It's about violence, and we should not be condoning or accepting violence under any circumstances. No ifs or buts. This is an unbelievable act of aggression against innocent people. And I'd ask people who are participating in these protests to just consider how their actions are affecting their neighbours and friends who are from the Jewish community. What could be more hurtful than this having happened and people then going out and somehow celebrating it? It's really, really, really bad, and I'd really ask people not to participate. In terms of the engagement of our security agencies, I think Peter Dutton would know as a Home Affairs Minister that we are lucky to have some of the most professional and skilled security agencies in the world. I take their advice on how to manage these issues, not the Leader of the Opposition.
On something you mentioned that the government's already looking at, and that is the repatriation of those that want to get out, and you've urged citizens to reach out and let the authorities know if that's the case, if they've got loved ones in Israel. So is the government working with Qantas? Has the government been in discussions with the national carrier to help make those flights happen?
Yeah, thanks, Kieran. Minister Wong's got primary responsibility there, and this is a very fast-moving issue, as you can imagine, and I'll allow Minister Wong to update you on how we're managing that situation. What I can just say is that the safety of Australians who are in Israel right now is an urgent priority of the government.
So it sounds like that is that the national carrier would be used for that purpose, I would imagine. Is that fair to say?
Kieran, I'm just going to let Minister Wong answer that question, if you don't mind. I've got enough in the Home Affairs portfolio to talk to you about, and I'd like Minister Wong to share the most recent information with you, which she'll do. Yeah.
Let's get to the social cohesion and the sort of broader ramifications here. Incidents where members of the Jewish community have been harassed. Certainly we've seen evidence of it, alleged harassment in Sydney, and then reports out of Melbourne as well, a car of people saying they wanted to commit crimes against Jews. This is obviously a big worry. Are the local and the state-based police forces handling this appropriately in your view?
Look, Kieran, I think so, but I do think this is a fast-moving issue, and the social cohesion aspects of this are actually going to be really important for us moving forward. And that's one reason why I would just say the language of aggression and conflict that we're hearing a little bit in the public discussion isn't always going to be very helpful in thinking about how we're going to recover from what's been a really difficult few days for our Jewish Australian brothers and sisters. There are real concerns that people in the Jewish community hold about the safety of their children and the safety of their homes and the safety of their synagogues. And when you understand the experience of what this has been like for the last couple of days for our Jewish Australian community, I think you can understand why they are feeling those concerns. So there is a lot of work happening at different levels of government to try to make sure that we can better manage this situation. I'm meeting with Jewish community leaders and Jewish Australian security experts tomorrow morning with Mark Dreyfus to talk to them about how the Commonwealth can support in a longer run sense. The state police are obviously very actively involved. The reason that we've triggered the National Coordination Mechanism is to address issues exactly like this one, Kieran, where we see that there are multiple levels of Australian government involved, and within levels of government there are often multiple departments involved. It is really important that when we confront a very difficult and tense and violent incident like this, we do so as one country. We are a beautiful multicultural country in Australia, and the reason that this has been such a successful multicultural country is because we think carefully about how our actions affect others, and we do not tolerate racism or anti-Semitism of any kind, and that's how we'll be working to resolve the current issues.
And because we have seen the social cohesion tear at times, obviously as you speak, it is crucial to this country and our success, but at times we've seen it erupt at points of tension. Is that a real worry for you right now, particularly with more rallies planned this weekend?
Look, Kieran, I don't want to speculate about things that haven't happened yet. All I would say is that social cohesion is an integral part of why Australia is such a beautiful and peaceful country. We've all got our part to play in simmering and helping to calm down the situation as it is today. I'd say again, with regard to the protests, please think about how your attendance at these events affects Jewish Australians who are living through an unbelievable tragedy for them and for their homeland in Israel. It is unspeakable, the violence that's been committed against their country, this unwanted and unwarranted attack of terrorism, and attendance at a protest which could be in any way interpreted as justifying that is just not on, and I'd really ask people not to do it. For the politicians that are involved here, calm language is what's needed, and I hope we'll see more of that in the coming days.
And just finally, I know you've got to go, several commitments for you this afternoon, but was it a mistake by the New South Wales Police to allow that rally on Sunday, just at the time when people in the Israeli and the Jewish Australian community wanted to pay their respects, at a time when New South Wales and the country showed solidarity by illuminating the Opera House, and yet Jewish Australians couldn't go to that very place?
Kieran, I know Chris Minns has made a statement today about that, which I think addresses the issue that you raised, so I won't add further commentary to that situation that's specific to New South Wales and the New South Wales Police. I will just say that to our Jewish Australian brothers and sisters, for any who are watching right now, please know that your government stands with you. This is an abhorrent act of violence which we utterly condemn, and we'll be doing everything we can in the coming days to create space for you to grieve, as you are understandably needing to do, and to make sure that we prioritise what are legitimate security and safety concerns for those citizens.
Home Affairs Minister Clare O'Neil, thanks as always.